From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters, welcoming all of you to tonight's show, including Kingdom of Nye Radio and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at the SOR Vault, grab a new book at We Read the Night, join the Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by CHIVE Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by donating to CHIVE Charities today. You can find them on our website. One of the greatest American conspiracies is what we're delving into tonight as we take a look at the mysterious death of James Forrestal. Peter Robbins is an investigative writer specializing in the subject of UFOs, and soon for the release, he has a new 1-hour documentary coming out looking into the death of the former Secretary of Defense. Peter has more than 35 years' experience as a writer, researcher, investigator, lecturer, and author. His website is peterrobbinsny, like New York, .com. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR News Wire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Mr. Peter Robbins, what a pleasure to have someone of your stature on our show for the first time. So appreciative to finally get you on. How are you?
I'm fine. It's great to be on the show, Dave.
Well, we're glad to have you here as well. Have you always been a little bit of a UFO nut conspiracy theorist? How much tinfoil do you wear on a daily basis?
Not at all. I got into this almost against my will, but my aim, my goal, my only intention growing up was to be an artist, a painter. And then the trolley jumped the tracks, and here I am as an investigative writer.
Well, before we go too deep into the whole James Forrestal thing, I want to touch on ufology here for a second, because you were one of the premier investigators, researchers in this field in the United States. I'm going to say North America and maybe the world, Peter. How did you come about getting into UFOs? What intrigued you about that subject?
Well, I had no interest in the subject at all. Growing up, it was simply out of sight for me. I was a geeky, bookish kid. I wasn't into sports. I was born in New York City, where I lived most of my life. Grew up in a lovely little village about 30 miles east of New York City. Very innocent time. And one afternoon, one of my sisters and I, when we were kids, were goofing around on the front lawn. And I'm guessing a lot of your listeners can relate if they grew up in a small town or have lived in a village. It's early summer or late spring, and there come times when there's just nothing going on. There's no other kids out playing, no cars driving around, mailman, ice cream man, and it's just you or you and a friend. And that's the way it was. And I caught something out of my right peripheral vision in a completely cloudless sky and had enough time to either say my sister's name or simply the word look. And 5 silvery white disc-shaped objects, metallic, not shiny like stainless steel, but more subdued like brushed aluminum, came into our realm of vision at very high speed in a very precise military-type V formation, and then simply stopped stock still over the neighbor's house. There was no question about the fact that they were truly anomalous. You know, when you hold a dinner plate at arm's distance and you tip it, it's elliptical. And that is what these were. and both Helen and I could make out regular detailing around the edge of each one. That's how close they were. I have no idea how close, if they were the size of, commercial airplanes, then they were X number of thousand feet away. If they were smaller, they were closer. But the detailing, we could only read when we talked about it many years later, the way that you would windows on a commercial airline. And they just hung there for, especially in kid time, a very interminable amount of time. Neither one of us said a word, but I went through a reaction that over the decades of conducting interviews and chatting with people who have had sightings, I call it the checklist reaction. And countless numbers of people have gone through it in their own ways. You're minding your own business, living your life, and you look up, and all of a sudden, there it is, or there they are. And your mind almost involuntarily rattles off variations on what I'm about to say. They're not planes, kites, blimps, helicopters, strange-shaped clouds, bird formations, a dirigible, flotsam and jetsam in the air. Oh my God, what am I looking at? Nothing in our formal education, our Judeo-Christian heritage, our universities prepares us for this. And I was about as sophisticated as Leave It to Beaver, a 1950s American television show about a very, innocent all-American kid.
Yes.
And I was not doing well with it. My last grasp, and I remember the words, although it became the repressed memory from childhood, although I have to say, jokingly, that if I have other repressed memories, I don't remember them. I had a very happy childhood compared to so many people, and wonderful parents and great sisters, and grew up in a nice place, lots of, stuff like that. But nothing prepared me for this. And the last kind of grasp of trying to fit it into the world I knew of a kid coming of age at that point in the more innocent part of the 1960s was, and I use this phrase because it was captured in hypnotic regression that I did. I did 3 hypnotic regressions years after the fact when the memory returned, partly to see if there was more to it, because there certainly was for my sister, or just to confirm the conscious memories that had in fact returned after a number of years. And I remember saying, or thinking, they must be some kind of secret government test planes. Yeah, that some kind of secret government test plane. And it just fell apart. I went to run into the house. That's how anxious I was at that point. And I should stop myself here because some of your listeners may be saying, wait a minute, you're seeing the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life or may ever see, and you know at a certain point they're going to be gone. You're telling me you've had it and you're now going to run in rather than just wait for them to disappear? Yes, that's how anxious I was. And I went to run into the house, and I'm going to compress the story a bit here. I was knocked out or passed out or made to go unconscious. And right there on the front lawn, heading to the front door, very specifically to tell our mom. And I picked myself up. I had kind of bruised my forearm as I went down. My sister was no longer there. They were no longer there. I went into the house. I walked upstairs, intuitively thinking that she might be in her bedroom, and she was, looking out the back window. And I thought, private moment, leave her alone. And I walked around through the living room and the dining room, and there's my mom in right profile at the stove making us lunch. I recall grilled cheese sandwiches. And I said the following: Mom, Helen and I just saw some things in the sky that looked like flying saucers from the movies, because that was my only point of reference. I'm old enough to have enjoyed some of those great old black and white B movies when they were first run with some of my nerdy little friends at our local movie theater on a Saturday. And I intuited that unspoken adult message that, you know, this is just fun stuff. They're not real. And I never questioned it. And my mother turned around and she looked at me. And many years later, when we talked about this for the first time, she didn't remember it. But having interviewed many, many people over the years who either were in my position and their parent or the responsible adult said something like, "Oh, honey, you just thought that's what they look like, but really they're, you know, blah, blah, blah," to basically deal with their own anxiety. Or somebody who, as an older parent, said, "I wish I hadn't reacted that way, but I didn't know what to say to my kid." My mother just looked at me very seriously, and I remember thinking, this is the way grown-ups look at each other. And in a way, she could not have made a better decision in what was, you know, a serious moment for her. And then she went back to finishing our lunch, I guess reflecting on it. After lunch, I, for the first and only time in my life, I jumped on my bicycle. I pedaled to our village library, a place I love very much. And there were lots of books on flying saucers. And I grabbed a couple off the shelf, checked them out, went home, went upstairs, closed my door. What I was hoping, Dave, was that one of those books would explain this away in conventional terms. The first one was, you know, my trip to Venus, and the second one, I know because I remembered the cover in Regression, was George Adamski and Desmond Leslie's contactee classic, Flying Saucers Have Landed. I would have taken them right back to the library that afternoon, but in fact, it was getting late in the afternoon. And late that afternoon, my sister came up to me and said, "Do you want to talk about this? You know, what we saw?" And I looked at my sister and I said, "No." And the days turned to weeks, turned to years. And within a matter of weeks, you know, we're pretty amazing creatures. If we don't want to deal with something, we don't. I compelled myself one way or the other to completely put it out of my mind. And only one thing rattled it loose before that memory reemerged like a freight train almost 15 years later. And that was in the 60s, on my very first LSD trip. Again, I'm old enough that when I took LSD for the first time, it was legal in America. And actually, It was a very good trip. I learned a lot. Be that as it may, I remember thinking about it then and even doing some watercolors, which sometime later I came upon and was actually quite horrified by and destroyed them. As a professional artist, I mean, that's a pretty dramatic reaction, but I did. The years passed, and I'm now 15 years older, in my late 20s, and I am really starting to live my dream. I have a loft in Lower Manhattan. I'm working for some of the big galleries, taking down the paintings and putting up new ones, showing my work occasionally. You know, blue-collar intellectual, working on construction projects in Soho during the day, painting at night, teaching at my alma mater, the School of Visual Arts, one night a week. Nice girlfriend, living in Chinatown and following my dreams, meeting famous artists. I really was living my dream. And damned if this memory didn't come back. I can tell you why I think it did come back, when it did come back. We have a lot of time tonight. I think it was several factors, the most important of which was probably that I was ready to deal with it. However, in the old days, before Mayor Giuliani, somebody I have no respect for and dislike intensely, declared, how can I say, fireworks were illegal. They are illegal in New York State, but the police always look the other way with the Chinese kids. You know, it's only 5,000-year-old tradition, where I remember they cracked down on the Italian kids selling them out of their trunks in Little Italy coming toward the 4th of July. Now it's completely illegal, but if you lived in Chinatown during the Chinese New Year, was like living in the DMZ. I mean, you know, it's 72 hours, 48 hours of just fireworks. And the street smell of cordite, that smell of gunpowder, you're kicking through ankle-deep fireworks. And I wasn't sleeping well. Also, I had done a human potential workshop a week or two before, something quite new to me that, loosened up some stuff in my mind. I think the real trigger when it was all said and done, though, was not that long before that, my grandmother, who lived to be 97 and lived most of her life very well on her own in a small apartment in Manhattan, we'd have dinner every few weeks. One evening after we came back from the restaurant, she said, "I have something for you, dear," and disappeared in her closet, came out with a little portfolio. She had saved several dozen drawings that I did as a kid. A lot of parents do this now, but parents, grandparents didn't so much when I was growing up. And I was delighted. They started when I was about 6 years old. I was a very precocious artist. It was what I did well first. And they went up to about the age of 14, which is about the age that this happened. Right. None of them dealt with the subject, but I brought them back to my loft, and shortly thereafter I ran into an ex-girlfriend I was on good terms with, and I told her about it, and she said, give them to me. I just finished a layout job for an advertising agency. Of course, this is the analog age when everything was done by hand, and I've got a whole roll of acetate. And what I'll do is I'll cut it to size, use electrical tape. Some of the drawings were on like manila paper, so they were kind of getting as fragile as papyrus from ancient Egypt and things. And, Peggy did a wonderful job, gave them back to me, and that afternoon I was flipping through them on the floor of my loft. And I came to one that I did. Again, the subject matter was completely immaterial, but I did it around that time. And the next thing I knew, Dave, this tidal wave of memory just came roaring up from nowhere, and it was like a Kodacolor tape loop. I was seeing it all again. I was right there on the front lawn with my sister. My first reaction was, of course I remembered it. I was so shocked that I could have forgotten it that I thought I must be having some kind of mental episode. It was a bit scary and overwhelming. How can you forget something like that? But again, the mind is an extraordinary thing, and I don't even think the phrase repressed memory syndrome existed back then. It's a simpler phrase for mental health professionals. But I really just started to cry. I was very overwhelmed and calmed down quick enough, washed my face, had a cup of tea, and thought, well, what the hell do I do now? And I answered my own question as I said it. I had a witness. I had enough self-possession to think through what I was going to say before I called my sister. She was a brilliant artist, ultimately a gold and platinum record award-winning musician, wrote lyrics for the Blue Oyster Cult, was part of the first wave of extraordinarily talented young people coming out of the original punk movement in New York, emanating from CBGBs and other clubs downtown. But at the time, Helen was a pretty dedicated poet, making part of her living sewing one-of-a-kind leather outfits for rockers. And she lived in your classic 5-story, walk-up, 150-year-old tenement in the East Village. I gave her a call. I said, "Is this a good time to talk?" "Yeah." I said, I've remembered something from childhood that happened to us, and I need to know what you remember. However, I am concerned that if I simply tell you what I remember, you'll say yes or no. And I won't really know in my heart if you remembered it the way I did." And she said, "I got it." And I said, "So what I'm going to do is set the scene." And I started to describe the weather that day, our ages, what the time of day basically was, late morning, where we were standing on the front lawn, and she just stopped me mid-sentence and said, "Stop, I know what you're talking about." I said, "Well, tell me." Well, she repeated pretty much what I did to you, except that she wasn't sure whether it was 5 or 6, which we worked out very quickly the next day, because that afternoon, after we got off the phone, the artwork I was doing completely got left in the dust in some ways, and I did a painting that afternoon, a very simple painting of 6 UFOs in a V formation, knowing that I remembered 5. And the next day, I went over to her house with the painting, but I had my hand covering the one on the lower right as I showed it to her. And then I took it away. And she remembered, as I did, the V being symmetrical. And before I turned the stage back to you, I had that moment of I can only describe it, one of the great schizophrenic moments of my life, in that my mind went, "Oh my God, they're real. Oh my God. Yeah, they're real." And then my sister said something that completely...
We only got about 10 seconds, boss.
...changed my life. And I'll leave it there for now.
Well, we'll continue this when we get back from break, and we're going to get into the conspiracy of James Forrestal, because this is just intriguing. I never knew it tied into UFOs as well.
Yes.
Peter Robbins is our guest tonight. His website, peterrobbinsny.com. If you want to check him out, I totally suggest you do. More on UFOs and James Forrestal right after this on Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the CHIVE and CHIVE Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, CHIVE Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the Mighty Moose Beard Oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty Moose Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know little brother is watching.
Finish off your weekend and kick off your new week with me, Everett Thiemer, right here on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to bring you great guests, a little bit of snark, and plenty of information to think about. But don't worry, there's going to be plenty of woo as well. We are going to hit everything in the paranormal and supernatural, including the odd Psychic Sundays. So tune us in on Sunday, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Every night on Spaced Out Radio, we have places for you to hang out. Hi, this is Carl. Join our SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook for live chat. On Twitter, using hashtag Spaced Out Radio, you can also join us in our Spreaker chat room. Check us out on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR. All of our archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. By the way, I'll be watching you at your window until you do. Bye!
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckard, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Are you having encounters with the paranormal, supernatural, or ufological that you cannot explain? Look no further than the SOR Sightlines Report, brought to you by the Experiencers Support Association. This is Ryan Stacy, head of the Research Association, TESA. Soon on the Spaced Out Radio website, you'll be able to file your reports and have them researched for you. We are independent and ready to help Spaced Out Radio listeners today.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a Space Traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Looking for something new to push your limits? Look Beyond the Spectrum, a new docuseries featuring some of the best researchers in the world when it comes to everything from UFOs, government cover-ups, and Bigfoot in the forest. Truth seekers like Steve Bassett, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Richard Dolan, as well as others all chip in to bring their knowledge to you. Beyond the Spectrum can be found on Amazon as well as Tubi TV. Tell us what you think on our Amazon page.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott, hanging out with all of you from SOR headquarters. Reminder that you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, do a little shopping at the Vault. You can pick up a new book at We Read the Night. Join the Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. We'd love it if you do. There's some cool features there. And read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. It's updated daily. Peter Robbins is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. UFOs and James Forrestal. Is there a tie in one of America's creepiest, I'm going to call it creepy because it kind of is, conspiracies out there? We're going to learn more as he has a brand new documentary coming out. About an hour long. I watched it tonight. Yeah, I got a sneak peek. I know you're all jealous about that, but it is good. Very good. Peter Robbins, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio.
Thanks, Dave.
Now, right before the break, you were talking about showing, I believe it was your sister, this UFO that you drew.
Well, I was showing her this painting, and she confirmed my memory, and then everything changed. For a lot of your listeners who are students of this subject, familiar with some of the literature, the well-known presenters, seen the documentaries, read the books, the mid-'70s, when this exchange happened, the abduction phenomena was really not a subject that had been explored beyond the Betty and Barney Hill case, and even the term abduction, nobody would have associated it with the word UFO. The term gray was still some decades to emerge. And my sister then said, after we agreed that we had seen this thing and my memory was confirmed, which was something, she said, but there's more, and I don't know if you're going to like it. I asked her, how come we had never talked about this? And she reminded me that afternoon she came up to me and asked me if I wanted to talk about it. And I said no. And she said, you're my brother. I love you. I respect you. I didn't, I did what you asked. And one day led to the next week, led to the next year, and here we are now. Could it be that simple? She said, yeah. She said, however, unlike you, I've never forgotten it. I said, well, what do you mean? How have you thought of it? She said, well, you have to understand. After a while, I saw you kind of peel out of my right peripheral vision. Intuitively, I knew that you were running into the house to tell Mom, but nothing was going to take my eyes off this thing. These are the most amazing things I had ever seen in my life. And I didn't find them scary. I just found them fascinating. And she said, within a few seconds, you went down. You passed out. And I went up. I said, what do you mean you went up? She said, I rose off the ground. My long hair was blowing. I looked up. They were getting bigger. The top of the house was getting smaller. And I'm thinking to myself, my sister's gone insane. And then within a second or two, Dave, I caught myself and went, it was just okay 5 seconds ago to have 5 silvery white disc-shaped objects where you could see the windows hanging over the Parker's home across the street. But now my sister's crazy. Listen to what she's saying. The things that she then told me, fragments of memory, again, not jogged by regressive hypnosis, not forgotten and then remembered like me, stuff that she simply never forgot, was unlike anything I had ever heard in my life. Now I've heard not only accounts like this certainly hundreds of times, even just in the work, my many years working as the assistant to a wonderful man and a great writer and a pioneer ufologist named Bud Hopkins. But in many interviews I've done with folks, she remembered going into this thing from the bottom and then being walked through a curved metal hallway by, again, the word gray didn't exist. And she relied on, she said, well, when I was a kid, I said, described them to myself as little doctors with big heads and big black eyes who talked to me in my head, and one big one. And the next thing she knows, she's on the table, not panicking, just kind of fascinated with these little beings around her, and then hearing in her head, as one does in classic abduction experiences, certain phrases, not even instructions. We've seen you before, we'll see you again. You're special. We will not harm you. We love you. However, one of the things that got wired up for her that made her a lifelong non-fan of these other intelligences was, as she was hearing in her head, we will not hurt you, she was experiencing some pain from whatever they were doing. And over the 15 years that followed, it was just a memory that she didn't feel compelled to talk about. And when she thought about it, she said usually she felt special. And that day, our lives changed, mine especially, in that now it was part of my life. And what was very difficult for me was I not only couldn't get it out of my head, it became immediately, obviously, more important than having a career as a New York painter. And I cannot tell you how much I resented that. I continued to paint. I continued to teach painting. I continued to show my work. But I knew in my heart that I was playing at it, that the real passion was now more and more obsessively focused on this subject. And I did not adjust well. Thankfully, within a year, I found a brilliant psychotherapist who, for your listeners who are aware, had been the first assistant to Dr. Wilhelm Reich for the last 11 years of Dr. Reich's life. And I went into therapy with Dr. Baker. Both Reich and Baker had UFO sightings. Reich took it very seriously, as did Baker, and he helped me adjust. But before that, I'd be walking down the street, and my mind would literally go into kind of a split screen. Part of it would be seeing myself doing just what I was doing. The other part of it would be kind of reliving the climax scene in the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the wonderful American B actor Kevin McCarthy runs into the middle of a highway and starts screaming at all the cars and trucks going by, "They're here, they're here already, you're next," before they fade back into the police station where he's been telling his story. That was not a healthy thing nor a comfortable thing. But with Dr. Baker's encouragement, I normalized my attitude about it. These things happen, like it or not, and I was drawn into the work, and I became an investigative writer.
I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I want to ask you about James Forrestal, because there are a number of conspiracy theories that are tied to the U.S. government. I mean, most recently, you could say 9/11. If you want to go down that path, you could say what happened to start the Vietnam War. You could say a number of things. But James Forrestal is one of those conspiracy theories that just doesn't seem to go away, but it also, in the same breath, does not get the attention that, say, the Kennedy assassinations or Vietnam or 9/11. Why do you think this one is so far down the pecking order?
Well, first let's kind of define our terms. As you now know from watching this documentary, which is the culmination of more than 30 years on and off of writing, research, a great deal of reading, archival work, going through documents, letters, out-of-print memoirs, a number of books written on the late Secretary of Defense, that it's not a conspiracy theory. This is a moment in American history that occurred in the early stages of the Cold War, where a very decent public servant, a man who I will characterize as a patriot, a word that I find, especially in America right now, bandied about in very irresponsible ways by people who have no right to use it, who are anything but patriots, who basically lost his life because he was overwhelmed by the responsibilities that he had regarding this subject. I first was like almost every American, unless, you had some reason to know who he was. And I consider myself a serious amateur student of 20th century history. I'm interested in a lot of things, but that area certainly. I had never heard his name until 1987. That summer, a document, an 8-page document with a 1-page letter attached, emerged from several UFO sources. The best known, the late, great Stanton T. Friedman, a dear friend, a mentor, one of the most credible, responsible, decent people in the history of UFO studies, who sadly we lost very suddenly this summer. In fact, Stan, as you may know, was a dual Canadian-American citizen, born in America, married a Canadian, and in fact, he passed away waiting to change flights, coming back from doing a radio interview, I believe, with George Knapp in Coast to Coast, and he passed away in the Toronto airport. But Stan and 2 other individuals received a roll of undeveloped film. And on that film, I believe that they received it some months before it became public, was an 8-page paper purporting to be a briefing document from November of 1952 for President-elect Eisenhower, explaining to him that in 1947, a truly anomalous object from parts unknown went down some miles from what was then a small town in New Mexico named Roswell, and that President Truman had pulled together a team of who he considered 12 of the sharpest minds to study this shocking subject. Individuals with backgrounds in defense, science, psychology, biology, sociology, you name it. 12 men, and it was called Majestic 12 or MJ12. Attached to that 8-page briefing document was a letter, eyes only, above top secret document, in several paragraphs, fairly brief and very terse, from President Truman to the new and the very first Secretary of Defense, James Vincent Forrestal, who had been sworn in a matter of less than a week before, essentially telling him that he should now begin to embark on this investigation with all due speed. And I was quite stunned by this, as many people in the field were. I should note that hundreds of pages have emerged in the decades since purporting to be generated by this very secret working group. I don't know how much of it is authentic. However, I have read through much of it over the years, and authentic or not, some of these documents, if they're fake, they're not fake as in somebody typed them up in their basement. They are, in many respects, brilliant disinformation. Some of them are accredited to well-known individuals who would have been consulted or may well have been consulted logically by the President of the United States and his working group, including J. Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein. What I mean by they were brilliant, we all have little linguistic quirks that sometimes come out when we write. If you're a serious writer like me, you may invert a certain preposition every once in a while. You may habitually use a semicolon instead of a comma or a full colon. You know what I mean? Yes. And in the cases where these documents are allegedly written by these individuals or well-known people who are on record, with lots of accessible writing, they're spot on. Again, I don't know if they're real, but like Stan Friedman, I am convinced that that original 8-page briefing document is indeed authentic. It's funny, this afternoon I was unpacking some boxes I hadn't opened in quite a long time and came upon some notebooks from 1987. And I was so taken by this document. I was already a dozen years into the subject. I was very proud of the fact that I was working as the assistant to a very well-known and highly respected person in the field. This gave me a window into his world and so many extraordinary cases and individuals. But I immediately, on my own, commenced on trying to learn who these 12 people were. I knew some of the names, read up on them, and then challenge myself to push deeper. Again, this is all pre-digital. There was no internet. You go to the library or, you'd read microfiche and print things out, or I spent a fair amount of time in the New York Times newspaper morgue, a fair amount of time in one of my favorite places, the main branch of the New York City Public Library, greatest reading room I've ever been in, and the most extraordinary research library, and began to put together a picture. Part of the question I was asking myself is, if this was real, would these have logically been the men that Truman had surrounded himself with? Did a number of them have pre-existing relationships? Did they know each other? And in every case, it was yes. Anyway, Stanton in 1987 gave a brilliant paper that summer at a very important UFO symposium that was held at American University in Washington, D.C. 87 would have been the 40th anniversary of Roswell, Kenneth Arnold sightings from Washington State, June 24th, a week or so before Roswell. And it was a paper called The Secret Life of Donald K. Menzel. Menzel, for all intents and purposes, was head of astronomy studies at Harvard, a very respected position in academia. But in fact, he was not only, he became kind of the very first debunker, whose protege was a man named Philip Klass, a very smarmy, rather vicious, could be charming person who spent most of his professional life attacking people's credibility who claimed to have had UFO sightings or incidents. Anyway, what Stan was able to do by accessing Menzel's papers at Harvard, his papers at the National Archives, and most important, his personal papers with the permission of his widow, was to establish the fact that, of course, he not only was one of the most respected astronomy members of the astronomy community in America, he also had a 30-year history as a member of the American national security establishment. And part of his job was to demean this subject from the get-go. I was inspired by that paper, and I went home after that very thought-provoking weekend, and about a week later I was having dinner with my parents. And this will lead us into Forrestal's life here. I told them that I was quite fired up about this. I showed them my copy of MJ-12. This name Forrestal was on it. Vannevar Bush, Roosevelt and Truman science advisor and technology advisor, one of the most fascinating people also of the 20th century, very few people know about. Anyway, I said, I want to do a serious investigation into the lives of one of these people, and I'm not exactly sure who, but these are the finalists. My mother looked at the list, and she said, do Forrestal. Well, okay, but why Forrestal, and why the immediate response? She said, number one, you have no idea, when I was a girl, how much we looked up to this man. He worked so hard to help us win the war. He was somebody that his name was in the paper as often as Truman's for years. And he was a hero. And when he committed suicide, which is the main subject that I challenge in this documentary, it broke my heart. It was a terrible day. Many of us looked up to him like you looked up to John Kennedy when you were a boy, and it devastated me. And then she said, and a few years before he died, and I was in high school, I was dating boys who were going off to the Pacific or the Western Front and fighting in Europe, and I could read the papers every day and, follow Mr. Forrestal and what he was doing. And he was a charismatic guy. He was handsome in a very rugged way. He had movie stars and writers as friends. He's a great dresser. And I had a crush on him. And I thought, well, there you go. And here I am more than 30 years later. Thank you, Mom, for kind of sending me off in that direction.
My friend, we only got about 20 seconds left before we go to break here at the top of the hour. And I find something very interesting. The day he committed suicide, May 22nd, 1949, that was the exact same day my father was born. I found that quite coincidental watching that. I did not know that.
And he didn't commit suicide.
Well, we're going to get into all that juice. Because that's the fun stuff. That's why we have you talking about this. I've wanted to do this subject for a long time, and we got one of the best talking about it tonight in Peter Robbins, his website, peterrobbinsny.com. You want to check that on out. More on the conspiracy of James Forrestal coming up in Hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio, so stay tuned. At spacedoutradio.com, we have a little bit of everything for you to stay up late. So while you're there, check out our SOR Newswire, where our team brings you stories of the weird and strange to the WTF from around the globe. News on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal, Darwinian-type crime tales. It's the stories that the mainstream media usually won't touch. Well, we got them all on the SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
A little bit of science, a little bit of skepticism. Add a dash of snark and you have the makings of Spaced Out Sundays with me, Everett Thiemer. Together we will look into the reality of the paranormal with an open eye and rational thought. Oh, did I mention there'll be plenty of woo as well? Your time spent with Spaced Out Sundays will make the night even better. The chat rooms are open, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, We're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
Hey, Spaced Out Radio fans! It's John Resig, founder of the CHIVE and CHIVE Charities. Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, and those with rare medical conditions 10% happier. We do this by donating one grant item, ranging from dance to therapy programs to prosthetic limbs, to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the store you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today. Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
Are you having encounters with the paranormal, supernatural, or ufological that you cannot explain? Look no further than the SOR Sightlines Report, brought to you by the Experiencers Support Association. This is Ryan Stacy, head of the Research Association, TESA. Soon on the Spaced Out Radio website, you'll be able to file your reports and have them researched for you. We are independent and ready to help Spaced Out Radio listeners today.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Come hang out with Spaced Out Radio where we own the night. This is Carl. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and during the show, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to chat with us live. On Instagram, at Dave Scott SOR. On Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. SOR archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. Come join us, or I will come join you. See you at your window.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to give a shout-out to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates. In Noonan, Georgia, WQEE 99.1 FM. KDNF, AM 1560 in Dangerfield, Texas. KDUN, AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon. UPRN, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and down in Ridgecrest, California. KZFX, 93.7 FM. On the digital side, hi to everyone listening in on Kingdom of Nye Radio and Revolution Radio. Great to have you with us. Remember, all of our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. The only thing I ask, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Huang. Huang is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. You can do a little shopping at our vault. You can pick up a new book at We Read the Night. Rock out to Bumblefoot, sign up for the Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, or read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. It's updated daily. We're talking James Forrestal tonight. Was it suicide or was it murder? The guy looking into this is one of the top researchers in America, Peter Robbins. His website, peterrobbinsny.com. And he's just done this documentary that's about to be released. It's an hour long. Highly suggest you watch it when it comes out because this is filled with intriguing information. Peter, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dave.
When is your video being released?
The DVD is actually available now. I sent you a link, which you are more than welcome to post. Main event, though, is in about a month or less. It will go up on Amazon as a film that you can download for a lot less than the DVD is, and I hope that your listeners will watch it when that becomes available.
Well, we're going to point him in that direction. That is for sure. Peter, James Forrestal was considered an American hero, patriot, somebody who helped form the Secretary of Defense, the Defense Department. He played a pivotal role coming out of World War II in helping make sure that the United States of America stayed on top of the world as part of being the world's police force. Now, maybe in today's date, a lot of people won't agree with that, but it was a different time back then.
Yes.
A much different time. Communism was running rampant, and there was a big need to make sure that America, especially after Pearl Harbor, remained safe and sound. And he played a major role in that. What happened to this gentleman? What caused him to all of a sudden just seem to lose it?
Yeah. Well, what happened to him was that he was all but completely forgotten and in a way written out of American history. And that was one of the main things that compelled me after writing a number of papers and articles and speaking on them at conferences, to lay it all out in a very modest way. In what I mean by that is, your listeners, like most of us, we're all pretty sophisticated viewers. We expect first-rate production values, all the bells and whistles. This is a very simple project. It's me and a green screen and 150 or so images, several very compelling pieces of film, and me talking to you from a script that I wrote, in which I tell you the story in kind of a 4-beat structure. His life and his extraordinary climb to the pinnacle of power in the Western world, his profound, tragic, and very public nervous breakdown, his institutionalization, his death, and then my investigation into it. We begin, though, in 1892, when he is born into a modest Irish-American family in upstate New York, excels at sports, and is accepted to Dartmouth College in 1911, a very fine university, and able to transfer to Princeton, one of the finest universities in America, the following year. Forrestal started at that point to mix with the sons, I believe it was still an all-male school, of many of the most powerful and influential men in America. And he made no bones about it. He was looking to live a good, prosperous life, and made friends and contacts that he stayed close to in some cases for the rest of his life. A passionate amateur boxer, ultimately a professional level golfer and tennis player. 3 weeks before he was to graduate from Princeton, however, he left and he went to the great nation of Canada, where he trained with the RAF to become a fighter pilot. The war and the armistice happened before he could go into action, and he returned to America, but not to Princeton. He went to Wall Street, where he worked for a very well-known and very successful firm called Douglas Dillon. And when Dillon died in 26, he became the head of that firm. That year, he also married a woman named Josephine Ogden. Ms. Ogden came from a very distinguished old Southern family, a family, though, that no longer had the kind of money that they had. But she was very glamorous, and this was the Roaring 20s. She was an editor at Vogue magazine, a former Ziegfeld showgirl, and it looked like an ideal, WASP kind of wedding. However, it started to disintegrate shortly after they got married because Forrestal wanted an open marriage. He was very attracted to a lot of women. They were very attracted to him. And it looked like a great marriage, but it was quite empty and got emptier as they went on. He was one of the few Wall Street leaders who not only was able to keep his firm in business through the crash of 1929, but continued to build it and make money for his clients. However, again, back in the Roaring 20s, he, being so charismatic, he became friends with some of the most famous writers and movie stars of the time, including Dorothy Parker and Robert Benchley, Gary Cooper, Greta Garbo. He was the kind of guy, when you read the descriptions in old out-of-print memoirs of people that knew him, when he walked into a room, everything stopped. He was, as they say, the man that all the guys wanted to have a drink with and all the women wanted to sleep with. By the mid-30s, his talents as a businessman were brought to the attention of President Roosevelt. and the president invited him to put his career on hold and moved to Washington, D.C., where he became an advisor to the President of the United States and part of a team of very successful men who helped America get itself out of the Depression. Once the economy was starting to roll again, literally all of these men returned to their prosperous lives and careers. James Forrestal did not. He took public service very seriously, and he basically never went back to business. He stayed in Washington and worked for the president. He went on to become the Assistant Secretary of Navy and was in charge, for example, of procuring every single item that the United States Navy needed, from sailors' hats to battleships. He thrived in the high-stress atmosphere. He was the ultimate team player. He was somebody who could be counted on always. In 1940, he started to keep a diary. Well, when we think of a diary, the picture that often comes to mind is a little book with a little lock on it that high school girls keep their most intimate secrets in. That was not the way it was for him. He'd often work till about 8 o'clock at night. He did not have a happy life to go back to at home, and he would often dictate to a naval secretary everything that happened that day, the people he met, the subjects of their conversations, his observations about them. He was an extraordinary observer of the world around him, and he continued that diary until 1949. In 1944, Frank Knox, the American Secretary of Navy, dies of a heart attack, and Forrestal becomes the Secretary of Navy. Unlike his predecessors, he did not direct the Navy from his desk at the Pentagon. He was a hands-on kind of guy and continued throughout the war, the remaining part of it, to put himself in harm's way. He was at the Battle of Leyte Gulf. He was at the Battle of Iwo Jima, at the Battle of Tokyo Bay. He was in Berlin shortly after Hitler's death. By then, President Roosevelt had died in April of 1945, and President Truman was now the president. At the end of the war, Harry Truman charged James Forrestal with a remarkably complex challenge. In America, from the time of the American Revolution, we had something called the War Department. Even as a kid, I understood the nature of war to a degree that a kid can. My dad was an Army Air Corps veteran from World War II and proud of his service, and I was always proud of Dad. But there was a department of the Army. There was a department of the Navy. And inter-service rivalry informed it throughout American history. What Truman had in mind was to dismantle the old structure and create a new entity that became known as the Department of Defense. He could have certainly chosen a blue ribbon commission to do it. Plenty of distinguished people that could have come together and done it. But he charged one man with the responsibility, and that was James Forrestal. He managed to do it and do it brilliantly, and nobody was surprised in the spring of 1947 when the president nominated him to become the first Secretary of Navy. The first Secretary of Defense. And it was approved by Congress 100%. The Senate and the House voted yes by acclamation, something that would never happen in these terribly fractured days that we're living through right now in America. He was sworn in, third week in September, I forget the exact date. However, he was sworn in very suddenly. So suddenly, in fact, that people who were critical of Truman or looking toward running against him for president in the next election were openly critical. Why the sudden decision? In fact, Truman had radioed his wishes that Forrestal be sworn in that afternoon. Maybe it was the 18th or so, 17th or 18th of September, en route back to America on a battleship from a state visit to Brazil. A man named Henry Wallace, a former vice president and somebody who was intending to run for the presidency, publicly stated what compelled the president to have the secretary sworn in that afternoon. If there was an emergency, the American people deserved to know about it, and there obviously was, or it wouldn't be happening this way. And if there wasn't an emergency, this seemed to Wallace the worst kind of fear-mongering. Well, what was it that compelled that swearing in? At this point, I present two documents. One, an MJ-12 document that I think is authentic, that is dated that day, and it is the very first study of the crash of an unknown object outside of the town of Roswell, New Mexico. Knowing that MJ-12 is controversial, I immediately go to a second document called An Assessment of the Situation, issued by Air Materiel Command, dated 2 days later, and a very unquestionably authentic document written by Brigadier General Nathan M. Twining. Twining was not some flighty character who embarrassed the service by talking about flying saucers. He went on to become head of the United States Air Force. And in this 2.5-page document, the most compelling sentence is the phenomena reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. As you know, Dave, from having watched the documentary, we come to a point where I show a flowchart of the responsibilities that would be assigned to the new Secretary of Defense. And they are mind-boggling. The amount of weight that rested on the shoulders of the person that served in that position, especially the first one, was truly sobering. In fact, the Secretary of Defense was the second most powerful man in what we used to call the free world. He could make policy. He was at the head of the most powerful military organization in history, going back some thousands of years. Who knows about beyond that? And Forrestal took the responsibility very seriously. This is also where that letter I mentioned earlier comes in. President Truman did not charge MJ-12 with getting to the bottom of this, although they were the study committee that is working around him. He charged James Vincent Forrestal with it. Forrestal was an extraordinarily principled man. While on the surface he had a tough look. He actually, while in an amateur boxing match at Princeton, had his nose broken and made the decision not to have it reset because he thought it would make him look tougher. You see photographs of this man, and it did. However, he was a sensitive soul. He studied the classics at Princeton. He had a very rough exterior, but he was particularly sensitive guy, and he had, I don't even know if the word is character flaws. They were part of his character, and I think they contributed to his ultimate undoing. One was, although he had more friends, in quotes, than anybody could count, and more people that looked up to him and admired him, he seemed unable to fully allow himself to open up to any one person. The other thing is that he personalized in the most extreme way all of his personal and professional successes and failures. By extension, that would mean he had some pretty good days. And by extension, it would mean he had some awful days. I think it's fair to say that most of us, whether we're working a job, have a family situation, if something goes really wrong, you still go home that night and either actually or allegorically kiss your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, pet the cat, take the dog for a walk, maybe watch a little TV, have dinner, and go back to your life and business or work the next day, resolving to do better. He let the fact that even in this extraordinary position, with all these assets at his command, over his time in defense, he was unable to get to the bottom of this mystery or even begin to unravel it. Were they hostile? What were the implications for humanity in the United States of America? It ate him up alive. In March of 1949, on the day that he stepped down as the first Secretary of Defense, and I am compressing the story here. In fact, the documentary could have been 10 one-hour, volumes.
Right.
On that day, the second Secretary of Defense took over. A political appointee, a bit of a hack, but that's the way American politics is sometimes. There was a change of command ceremony. A very public part of it took place in the huge central courtyard of the Pentagon, with more than 1,000 people in attendance. And then it went to the Oval Office. And this is where the story gets particularly poignant and intense. There comes a moment.
We only got about 90 seconds here, so we'll get. There
comes a moment when the President of the United States pins whatever the medal was, that's the highest civilian medal, on his lapel and says, "You deserve it, Jim." Forrestal walks up to the mic and says, "It's beyond my," and trails off. And everybody in the room knew something was terribly wrong.
That is interesting. Very, very interesting. As we got about a minute to go here, I think it's really interesting to find out why Truman, in his presidency, lost faith in the job Forrestal was doing.
We'll get to that right after the break.
Yeah, I mean, that one just intrigues me because, I mean, these two guys seem like they were not only political, but they seem to be friends. And then
they were.
All of a sudden, boom, Truman just kind of became a turncoat on him, and it doesn't really make sense to me. That's one of the queries I had. And I never get to use the word query enough on this show.
Yes.
That's one of the queries I had after watching the documentary. I'm like, what the hell? What's going on here? Why did that happen? We're going to find out, though.
After break.
Peter Robbins is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're talking about the conspiracy around the death of James Forrestal. Was it suicide? Was it murder? Yeah, there's a beautiful 1-hour documentary on this by Peter. You can check it out on his website, peterrobbinsny.com. It's got a bunch of books on there as well. More about Truman and Forrestal coming up on Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, BUMBLEFOOT.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Every night on Spaced Out Radio, we have places for you to hang out. Hi, this is Carl. Join our SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook for live chat. On Twitter, using hashtag Spaced Out Radio. You can also join us in our Spreaker chat room. Check us out on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR. All of our archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. By the way, I'll be watching you at your window until you do. Bye!
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
Finish off your weekend and kick off your new week with me, Everett Themer, right here on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to bring you great guests, a little bit of snark, and plenty of information to think about. But don't worry, there's going to be plenty of woo as well. We are going to hit everything in the paranormal and supernatural, including the odd psychic Sundays. So tune us in on Sunday, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the CHIVE and CHIVE Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, CHIVE Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the Mighty Moose Beard Oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty Moose Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio. Looking for something new to push your limits? Look Beyond the Spectrum, a new docuseries featuring some of the best researchers in the world when it comes to everything from UFOs, government cover-ups, and Bigfoot in the forest. Truth seekers like Steve Bassett, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Richard Dolan, as well as others all chip in to bring their knowledge to you. Beyond the Spectrum can be found on Amazon as well as Tubi TV. Tell us what you think on our Amazon page. Welcome back to the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Great to have you with us. I want to remind all of you that if you want to check out our free archives, they're at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at the SOR Vault, get a new book at We Read the Night. Join the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, or read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. It's all right there on our website. Peter Robbins is here talking about the conspiracy behind the death of James Forrestal. On record, suicide. Off the record, who knows? Maybe it was the Men in Black. We know it wasn't aliens, as Peter's website is peterrobbinsny.com if you want to check it on out. Peter, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dave.
Now, right before the break, I'd asked you a question about what tainted the relationship between President Truman and James Forrestal, because that seemed to cause a lot of stress on this man who literally gave everything to the defense of the United States.
That's correct. And I'm really glad you brought me back to that point. As I glanced over it, I realized we have the time for it, and your listeners should know. We now go back to mid-October of 1948. The presidential elections are coming up in November, and Truman was expected to lose and lose big. He was running against a very popular Republican candidate, the then governor of my home state here, New York, Thomas E. Dewey. Now, American politics over the last half century plus, as we come toward a presidential election, and it's one of the things that I am proud of about our republic, there is discrete interfacing between individuals representing the President of the United States and the challenger, with the understanding that if there needs to be a change of power, it will be smooth, peaceful, and absolutely frictionless, or hopefully. Back in 1948, not only was this not the case, but nobody had ever even really considered it. And Forrestal, being a pragmatist, understanding that at this very tense moment in world history, in American history, somebody from the Truman camp should make contact with somebody from the Dewey camp because he might be elected president. Perfectly logical thinking. And he shared that with a protege of his, a man named Robert Lovett, who went on to become a later Secretary of Defense. Lovett mentioned this fact to some of the people around Truman, who, over the few years preceding, had developed a certain resentment toward James Forrestal because he was a favorite of the president's. He had served him and President Roosevelt brilliantly without any hint of scandal or any problem. The tragedy here is that Truman came to believe that Forrestal had acted in a disloyal manner. When you study his life, as I have, this would have had to have been gut-wrenching for the secretary. I think literally, not allegorically, he would have given his life. He would have laid it on the line for both of the presidents that he served. He was that dedicated a public servant. And it absolutely decimated him that he had lost the president's confidence. It was exacerbated by the fact that Truman, who could hold a grudge, refused to even see him or speak to him until several weeks after the election, and then really only for a photo op at the president's residence in Florida. Now, at this point, where you have a president-elect, one of the things that happens is all of the cabinet officials hand in their pro forma resignations. Most of them, I think, hoping that the resignations won't be accepted. But at least the president has it on paper, can keep them on or let them go. To Forrestal's great disappointment, Truman accepted his resignation. We have records that indicate that Forrestal joined the president for off-the-record White House luncheons on the 8th, I think the 14th, another one later in the month. They discussed a number of things, including nuclear development. And at the same time, it's at this point that the world learns of James Forrestal's diary. Now, again, it wasn't a normal diary. And if you think about 9 years of most nights for several hours dictating everything that happened to you that day, it came to several tens of thousands of pages kept in a standard filing cabinet as was used at the Pentagon at that time. The way that it worked in American politics at that point is for high-ranking bureaucrats, they would often leave office with all of the paperwork that they had accumulated, quite extraordinary, and, go home and write their memoirs. Forrestal contacted the White House with the request that they send representatives to his office in the Pentagon and that they take possession of this filing cabinet and that it be taken to the White House. Why? Because besides all of these hundreds of diary entries, it was filled with top secret paperwork, and he was too responsible to even consider taking it with him. Anyway, we come up now to the change of command ceremony. As I mentioned right before the break, this was on March 28th. Again, employees of the Pentagon are assembled together in the courtyard for a big public thank you, Mr. Secretary, and welcome to the new secretary. And then the president and invited guests and Mr. Secretary Forrestal head for the Oval Office, where the president awards the now, in the immediate moment, former Secretary of Defense, the highest ranking medal a civilian can receive. And Truman is quoted as he does it as saying, "You deserve it, Jim." Forrestal then steps to the microphone and says, quote unquote, "It's beyond my," and he trails off. For me, the natural drama of what now comes, even the best Hollywood scriptwriter would be hard-pressed to create what actually happened. One of the individuals observing this very close up is a Pentagon worker named Clark Clifford. He works, I guess what you'd call as an apprentice to Forrestal, and he is a future Attorney General of the United States. And in his memoirs, and I'm going to quote here, he remembers, quote, "Unable to respond to the president's generous words of praise, Forrestal is led speechless from the room. It was suddenly apparent to everyone that something was terribly wrong." Let me say here that I am not a mental health professional, and I certainly don't claim to be. However, I am very proud to have worked for 8 years as a volunteer and then as a ship supervisor and volunteer, to be blunt, on the busiest suicide hotline in America. I was trained to interface with depressed, mentally ill, lonely, sick, and suicidal people, and I certainly dealt with my share. I think there's, for people who thankfully have never experienced the level of depression that can compel somebody to end their life, there are a lot of myths about what's going through an individual's mind. First, it's often a combination of factors, as I expect it was with Mr. Forrestal, but whatever it was had been building up, obviously, for a long time. But that afternoon, it all came out. Shortly thereafter, he was seen being approached by the first Secretary of the Air Force, remembering that the Air Force only came into existence in the United States in September of 1947. They were the new boy on the block, so to say. And there was all the more kind of inter-service rivalry over funding. The first Secretary of the Air Force was a man named Stuart Symington, who went on to become an American senator. And he was heard to say to now retired Secretary Forrestal, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. Now, we have no idea what Symington said to Forrestal, and he took it to his grave. However, the effect on Forrestal was incredibly upsetting. And he then kind of went missing in the Pentagon for some time. They ultimately found him in his old office, sitting at his old desk, staring at the wall, and repeating the phrase, "You are a loyal fellow. You are a loyal fellow." Once he's outside the Pentagon, he seems disoriented and a bit dazed, so much so that the chauffeur for another important bureaucrat, Vannevar Bush, the president's science and technology advisor, sees him out there and escorts him to his car and then takes him home to his townhouse in Georgetown, just outside of the active government area in Washington, D.C. The first person Forrestal calls when he gets home is one of his mentors, an old friend from Princeton, who went on to become an extremely successful banker, a man named Ferdinand Eberstadt. In fact, it was Eberstadt who brought Forrestal's skill as a businessman to the attention of President Roosevelt. Eberstadt goes to his home and is shocked by his appearance. He's also even more shocked by the fact that Forrestal tells him that he feels his life has been a total failure and he's considering suicide. He pushes him and he wants to know why. And Forrestal's response is essentially, "I can't tell you, it's a secret." He flies him down to an area in Florida where their mutual friend Robert Lovett has an estate. Lovett meets the aircraft at the airfield and is also terribly shocked when Forrestal steps from the plane. He looks terrible. Lovett nonetheless tries to joke with him and, put on a happy face and says, I believe the quote is, "Jim, I hope you brought your golf clubs because the weather here has been perfect for golf." Forrestal's reply, that I do remember, is, "Bob, they're after me." Over the next 3 days, James Forrestal attempts to take his life several times, but because of Lovett and Eberstadt's presence, he is stopped. The family has decided on a psychiatrist, a very famous one named William Menninger with a clinic in the Midwest, but the Navy, most appropriate because he is a former Secretary of Navy, has sent their head of psychiatry from the Bethesda Naval Hospital to Florida to examine the Secretary. Unfortunately, because of a sense of not even misguided, his interpretation of ethics, he felt he could not examine him until the psychiatrist of record was there, and that happened overnight. And as Lovett writes in his memoirs, the best he could do was clean out the medicine cabinet, lock Forrestal in a room, and hope to God he didn't, find a way to kill himself. Well, the next day, both psychiatrists are there. They examine him. and they feel that the way to go is that he should be committed to Bethesda, and he is taken there, and once again tries to kill himself, this time by trying to jump out of the moving car as it's heading for the airfield. We'll come back to this later, why so intent on doing it and doing it right then and there. Anyway, he is taken to a room on the 16th floor, and a 3-shift, 8 hours each, 24-hour Marine Guard is put on that door. We understand that the first 2 weeks or so he was probably kept fairly sedated and then goes into treatment, as would have been appropriate in 1949 for somebody suffering from that level of depression. Whatever it was that was driving him to want to end his life dissipates somewhat. He starts to get his will to live back. The president and other high-ranking officials and individuals are now visiting him in the hospital. Everybody is reporting that he's doing a lot better. I have seen most of the hospital records for myself. The physicians, the psychiatrists treating him concur. And the very first phone call he is allowed when he gets phone privileges is to a very highly regarded Monsignor, a Catholic prelate in the Beltway area named Maurice J. Sheehy. Sheehy is the priest for quite a number of Capitol Hill Catholic insiders, and Forrestal, who is Catholic, and to put it mildly, has drifted from the church over the years, asks the Monsignor on the phone to come and see him and help him return to the church. Well, of course, the Monsignor immediately makes an appointment to do so. Over the next several weeks, he will make 6 appointments and come at the appointed time only to be told, the secretary is sleeping, he's in treatment, they don't let him see him. But, once again, the hospital records, the visitors, the newspaper articles, all of the people around him, including his brothers, observe that he's getting better. He's now taking pride in his appearance again. He's shaving. He's gained 12 pounds that he had lost when he went in. And it is arranged by his brother that he will pick him up at the hospital on Sunday, May 22nd, and then take him to the estate of a friend of theirs, where Mr. Forrestal can now recover in just the right, peaceful, protected surroundings. Sheehy is now furious because after 6 times and being asked by this man, he is not allowed to see him. And now he makes an appointment with the Secretary of the Navy. And the Secretary of Navy sees him, and the Monsignor blows his top. He is assured that he will get to see him. Unfortunately, he doesn't, because at that point, there's only 2 days left in the life of the Secretary. Now, official accounts of Forrestal's death vary very slightly. Basically, though, and I don't want to lay out every bit of the story, but on the night of the 21st, transitioning into the 22nd of May, one of the Marine Guards doesn't show up. Ironically, it's the one that he has gotten the closest to. In fact, from all accounts, they've developed something like a father-son relationship, and there is talk that maybe he will retire. He will hire this young Marine when he leaves the service to be an assistant or secretary or something, all good. And a hospital orderly is now on that shift. He checks in on the room at about 1:30. The patient appears to be sleeping. Checks him again about 15 minutes later. The major account has the orderly finding Mr. Forrestal awake, sitting at the small table in his room, it's kind of a reflection of the man he is, copying a Sophocles poem out of a poetry anthology onto a piece of stationery, hospital stationery. The orderly asks him if he'd like a sleeping pill. He declines. And then, if we're to believe the official account, forgets to lock the door. Checks the door 5 minutes later, the secretary is no longer in there. The official account says, even though he was really doing great and looking forward to getting out of there and recovering quietly, he has a change of heart, finds the door open, walks across the hall to an efficiency kitchen with an unsecured window, kicks out the screen, then takes the sash off his bathrobe and ties it tightly around his neck. And then in the original accounts from the Navy, ties the other end of the sash to the radiator below the 16th floor window, which was disproven within days. That was never done. And then allegedly lowers himself out the window to hang himself out the window, changes his mind, tries to get back in, and falls to his death. Well, I spent years studying all of the available material, and at this point, I begin an investigation into his death. This is a very concise hour documentary, and we move fairly quickly through it. But I'm going to touch on some of the high points, although I know we're coming up to a break shortly, yes, on was it murder or was it suicide? The first investigator, civilian investigator, was a very respected features reporter for the New York Times, a man named Walter Wagner. And within less than a day, he establishes, number one, that his bathrobe sash was tied around his neck, that he was copying that Sophocles poem, that hospital authorities indicated he was progressing and ready to be released, that with continued treatment privately, he'd be back to his old self in a matter of months. For me, the most chilling aspect of what Wagner was able to dig up, and this is the day after he dies, this man did his due diligence, and this is not in dispute, that on the outside window ledge, there are fingernail scratch marks covering it. And as he says, I guess it's the ultimate understatement, suggesting that he might have changed his mind and tried to climb back in the window.
On that note, we're going to find out when we come back from the break. Was it suicide or was it murder? Was it the Men in Black? Was it aliens? Or was it somebody trying to shut the man up? This is where things get interesting in the start of hour number 3 with Peter Robbins. PeterRobbinsNY.com is his website. You're definitely going to want to check out this documentary, so make sure you do. We'll be back with Peter for the first half hour of hour 3, then the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio. At spacedoutradio.com, we have a little bit of everything for you to stay up late. So while you're there, check out our SOR Newswire, where our team brings you stories of the weird and strange to the WTF from around the globe. News on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal, Darwinian-type crime tales. It's the stories that the mainstream media usually won't touch. Well, we got them all on the SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the CHIVE and CHIVE Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, CHIVE Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Every night on Spaced Out Radio, we have places for you to hang out. Hi, this is Carl. Join our SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook for live chat. On Twitter, using hashtag Spaced Out Radio, you can also join us in our Spreaker chat room. Check us out on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR. All of our archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. By the way, I'll be watching you at your window until you do. Bye!
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the store you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
A little bit of science, a little bit of skepticism. Add a dash of snark and you have the makings of Spaced Out Sundays with me, Everett Themer. Together we will look into the reality of the paranormal with an open eye and rational thought. Oh, did I mention there'll be plenty of woo as well? Your time spent with Spaced Out Sundays will make the night even better. The chat rooms are open, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
We're underway in the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Always appreciate all of you tuning us in, especially if you're listening in on KDUN AM. Where are we here? AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon, KZFX 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California, KDNF AM 1560 in Dangerfield, Texas, UPRN 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia. On the digital side, we're proud to broadcast on Revolution Radio and Kingdom of Nye Radio. Don't forget, all of our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hwang. Hwang is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Do a little shopping at the SOR Vault. Pick up a great book at We Read the Night. You can also join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and keep up to date with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk updates it daily. For the final time tonight, we introduce Peter Robbins. His website, peterrobbinsny.com. Talented author, researcher, and documentarian. And we're talking about his latest documentary. It's an hour long, well worth the watch, on the conspiracy around the death of James Forrestal. Peter, welcome back.
Glad to be back. Into the home stretch we are.
Now, why do you believe that James Forrestal did not commit suicide?
Number of reasons. First of all, as I mentioned before, these were very different times. And James Forrestal was the most highly informed individual in the American government, next to the President of the United States, about anything classified to do with the defense of the United States. At the top of that list, probably even above the emerging Soviet threat and the possibility that Stalin, as he did, spies of his might get the nuclear secrets and we begin to go into a very dark new world. It's fair to say that back then, nobody knew anyone, with the rarest exceptions, who had ever seen or consulted a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a counselor, a therapist, etc. Now, of course, it's just the opposite. I bet, you've got a large audience, I know that, but I would take an educated guess that literally no one doesn't know somebody who, or somebody in their family, or somebody that they know in their workplace, or they themselves, has seen a counselor, or been in therapy, or consulted with a mental health professional at one point or another. The idea of a nervous breakdown in the mind of the most powerful alpha male boiler room in the world at the time, certainly in the United States, the men around Truman, was an abstraction. And the idea that the toughest guy in the room, the one they all looked up to, the one who was literally always going, always achieving, the ultimate team player, the ultimate patriot, could have a profound nervous breakdown was a cause for great concern. So much so that, as viewers of the documentary will see, there's almost no other way to see it except to understand why James Forrestal would have become, in their minds, potentially the greatest threat to the security of the United States of America, because, not because he had the breakdown, but because if he recovered, whatever that meant, he might have a relapse. And that could not be allowed to happen. I am convinced, and I say this speaking for the tiny little lawyer that lives on the left side of my brain, that James Forrestal not only understood this, but understood that once everything came breaking through on the 28th of March, and there was no way to hide what had happened, that he was completely undone and had this very public nervous breakdown, he knew, it's a very sobering thought, that he had to die. And like a good Roman soldier, he tried to throw himself on his sword, so to say, several times. But he was stopped by individuals who cared about him, who were right there. Then he was institutionalized, and he did not have access to a way to end his life. And then one of the ultimate ironies, certainly even though these were as fine a staff of mental health professionals, this is the premier military hospital. In fact, just earlier this week, it's where President Trump went to have a checkup. It's where all the big Washington mucky mucks go, that they started to treat him for depression, as was prescribed in 1949. And he started to respond. As I mentioned earlier, he got his will back to live. That sealed his fate. There's an expression that I like to, with my dark sense of humor, credit to mob hitmen. Right before they shoot you in the back of the head twice with a silenced .22 pistol, it's nothing personal. It's just business. James Forrestal had to die. It was nothing personal. They just couldn't take the chance. In the documentary, I think I proved this in a manner that I could bring it to court. But no question about it, it was not spacemen, and it was probably, if anything, not men in black, but men in white. And it had to have been at least two men, possibly three, who were able to walk in at 1:30 at night, whatever. Mr. Forrestal went out the window at about 10 minutes of 2 or so a.m., make their way up to the 16th floor, which probably would have meant that they had the right IDs, that they may well have been wearing, white doctor's kind of coats, make their way to the room, which was left open, and force Mr. Forrestal out of that window. It's not out of the question that in order to preserve what we call plausible denial, President Truman may not have known. That's the safest way to protect the president, and just act in a way that you felt was protecting him. I have to stop here for a moment because I've told this story so many times, but I get angry and sad every time I tell it. He was just the loosest potential cannon. I think that he would have rather died than tell it. He tried to kill himself. How dedicated do you have to be? And I don't think it was in a moment of confusion or moments of confusion. I think it was the brightest clarity imaginable. In my years working suicide hotline, I interfaced with many mental health professionals, and not surprisingly, a good percentage of them, and in the years since, who were specialists in suicide. I presented this scenario probably to several dozen psychologists, psychiatrists, psychiatric social workers over the years, and every one of them has responded in one way or another. Jumpers jump. People that want to hang themselves. Nobody tries to hang themselves out of a 16th floor window, in my opinion. He had everything.
Depression, though, sorry to cut you off there, but depression, though, can make you do some pretty ridiculous things if that little dark voice in the back of your head is like, come on, it's time to go.
Well, you're absolutely right, Dave. You're absolutely right. And what we then were faced with, we, the American people, back in 1949, was an immediate barrage in all the major media, backed up by the government, that the stress that he had incurred, helping the country to get out of the Depression, heading the Navy, creating the Defense Department, being faced with, forget about UFOs, that was a joke to the American people. They had been well conditioned by the end of the summer of 1947. But it's important to note, at least parenthetically, that in July of 1947, the term Cold War, the term Iron Curtain, first emerged in the lexicon. In other words, the modern age of UFOs and the Cold War were born at the same moment in time. I believe that's a legitimate coincidence, but it's worth noting. So it was easy enough for the American people, especially when major media presented him as a casualty of war who was suffering as much as any combat soldier from the terms we used to use before post-traumatic stress, that they accepted it. 2 days later, he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery, the president giving the eulogy, several thousand people in attendance, I think a 21-gun salute, buried with honors, and then all but forgotten. I say all but because a aircraft carrier was named after him. Princeton named a campus after him. If one were to take the tour of the Pentagon that civilians can, if you walk into the main lobby, you'll see a large bust of James Forrestal. But I would say 99% of Americans is a generous number for the people that didn't know him. He had to die. And again, we're moving through our 2.5 hours quite quickly. It took me many years of righteous indignation and how dare they. And I made this documentary in great part because I felt it was my responsibility as a specialty researcher who had gotten very caught up in the story to bring his name back and to remind Americans and the people of the world that a good and decent man lost his life in the very early days of the UFO cover-up because he knew too much, and because, after suffering a very legitimate, profound breakdown, other men who also loved their country and were concerned with its security, felt he couldn't be allowed to live. For me, a major jumping off point, and it happens every once in a while in life, where something triggers something in you and you see something that you were dead set in your opinion about from another point of view. I realized I had to, if not forgive, these men. They were murderers. They forced him out that window. Can you imagine how terrifying his last moments were? They did what they thought was best for the United States. It is not out of the question. These were probably not hired hitmen. These were people very close to the President of the United States who either were charged with or took it upon themselves. Again, I'm speculating here, but it's highly informed speculation, to end this man's life. In fact, they might have known him. And if they did, they might well have respected him and admired him. So there's a terrible irony at the end of this story. And even in the time that we've had, 2.5 hours, I've only touched on portions of what I cover in this very intense 1-to-1 hour with viewers. I will let Dave know when this becomes available as a download. For those of you that are DVD people, wonderful. This is what I do, and I'm in a process of literally rebuilding my career after a major setback in terms of the book that I was best known for. Several years ago, my co-author on it was exposed as a liar, and a pathological one, injecting himself brilliantly into the story of the best known and best documented British UFO incident. And with great mixed feelings, I had to encourage our publisher to do their own investigation, and if they came to the conclusion that I did, which they did, that they needed to take that nonfiction book out of print because it was no longer nonfiction. It was part nonfiction. The book is left at Eastgate. I will always be proud of hundreds of parts of it. You can probably find it online used because it's never be printed again. But if you read it, understand that it's filled with untruths. This superimposed itself on a very personal aspect of my life. My dad, who I love very much, who lived to be more than 98 and a half years old. A wonderful guy who died on his own terms last year. I basically took over his care and saw him out on his own terms last year, and very proud of that fact. But this DVD, this documentary, is my first new product, for lack of a better word, in kind of bouncing back into the world of investigative work. I'm proud of it. I hope you'll have a chance to see it. I'm a very accessible person. My email address is public. Some of you may be friends with me on Facebook. If you're not, I keep trying to winnow down my 5,000 maximum people so that I can have new friends, but you can certainly follow me. I'm very outspoken in my views. I have lost quite a number of people that respected me because I am very adamant about my feelings about the current administration. Most of my colleagues are smarter than I am and keep their political views to themselves. I don't care whether you love the President of the United States or hate him. For me, it's something that I need to speak up about. But I'm proud of my investigative work, and I'm delighted that Dave invited me on the show. Originally it was, I've had a long day. I don't need to start this at midnight and go till 2:30 in the morning. However, my secret weapon is that I am a cheerful insomniac, and if I make contact with somebody I like, it's great to talk into the night. So, Dave, thank you for the privilege of hanging out with your audience, sharing some of the story of a great American who Canadians, Americans, other people should know about. And, yeah, I guess that's about it.
Well, we got about 3.5 minutes here before we got to say goodnight to you. And I want to ask you, in regards to the reason, you said a couple of times James Forrestal had to die.
Yes.
Maybe it's me being Canadian. Maybe it's me being too young, because this happened way before I was born, and probably for many others out there. What do you mean by that statement?
What I mean by it is, in 1949, the idea of the second most knowledgeable person in the American establishment in terms of our secrets had a profound nervous breakdown. This was something literally, I would bet, unknown to the men that he worked with. Nervous breakdowns are for girls. Nobody saw a psychiatrist back then. And their hyper concern that if he got well, whatever that meant, that he might then relapse. And if he had a relapse, he might say something that was above top secret, highly classified, or in some other way injurious, potentially, to the safety and security of the United States of America. And they couldn't take that chance. They couldn't risk it. And that's what I mean by it. I think, again, Forrestal not only knew this, he understood it so well that he tried to do the job for them. He was stopped. Yeah. Again, I know that you watched the documentary tonight and then bang, you're on the air. And at some point between now and when I return to the show, watch it again when you're not feeling pressured. I think the points will be driven home better. And again, point for point, I approached the last half of this documentary as though I were presenting a case for murder in an American courtroom. And I'm proud to say a number of lawyers, attorneys who have heard my talks or read my articles on James Forrestal over the past few decades have complimented me and said that they felt I did a good job in presenting the case for murder as opposed to suicide.
I want to say a big thank you, Peter Robbins, for coming on Spaced Out Radio for the first time tonight. What an absolute pleasure to get your research on this in a case that is probably a forgotten case in the world of conspiracy, especially in the United States, but one that is as of important today as it was 70 years ago.
Yes. It was a pleasure being on the show, Dave, and you're right. And hopefully it will now gradually become a case that is not forgotten.
Peter, where can people find it? We got about 10 seconds.
Facebook at peterrobbinsny.com, a website much in need of updating, which will be done soon. And if you are following my Facebook page, I post all the public talks I'll be doing in future. I will be in Knoxville, Tennessee in March. I think I will be in Nevada in February, hopefully New Mexico in July, and like that.
Perfect. Peter Robbins, everybody. Coming up next, we got the SOR News Wire and the Thought of the Day as we bring this thing home. We'll be back.
Every night on Spaced Out Radio, we have places for you to hang out. Hi, this is Carl. Join our SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook for live chat. On Twitter, using hashtag Spaced Out Radio. You can also join us in our Spreaker chat room. Check us out on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR. All of our archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. By the way, I'll be watching you at your window until you do. Bye!
A little bit of science, a little bit of skepticism. Add a dash of snark and you have the makings of Spaced Out Sundays with me, Everett Thieme. Together we will look into the reality of the paranormal with an open eye and rational thought. Oh, did I mention there'll be plenty of woo as well? Your time spent with Spaced Out Sundays will make the night even better. The chat rooms are open, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
At spacedoutradio.com, we have a little bit of everything for you to stay up late. So while you're there, check out our SOR Newswire, where our team brings you stories of the weird and strange to the WTF from around the globe. News on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal, Darwinian-type crime tales. It's the stories that the mainstream media usually won't touch. Well, we got them all on the SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, Spaced Out Radio fans! It's John Resig, founder of the CHIVE and CHIVE Charities. Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, and those with rare medical conditions 10% happier. We do this by donating one grant item, ranging from vans to therapy programs to prosthetic limbs, to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, BUMBLEFOOT.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, hanging out with all of you, and what a pleasure it is. Reminder that if you miss most of this show or others, go to our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you. Sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Grab a new book at We Read the Night. Do a little shopping at the Vault. We got Black Friday prices on there, I believe. You can rock out to Bumblefoot. And read up on Captain Shirk's SOR News Wire. Speaking of the news, let's get to it, shall we? The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR News Wire at the back end of every show. We get to the weird, the strange, and the wonderment as we query, I got to use that word more, query whether or not there are aliens on Mars. NASA has vehemently denied that there are living insect and reptile-like creatures on Mars after a professor at Ohio University made the controversial claim earlier this week. The collective general opinion of the large majority of the scientific community is that current conditions on the surface of Mars are not suitable for liquid water or complex life, Alana Johnson, NASA's public affairs officer, said in a statement. Johnson added that one of NASA's objectives is the search for life in the universe. And with the upcoming Mars 2020 rover, the government space agency hopes to take the next steps in exploring the potential of past life on the red planet. Although we have yet to find signs of extraterrestrial life, NASA is exploring the solar system and beyond to help us answer fundamental questions, including whether we are alone in the universe, Johnson claimed. From studying water on Mars, probing promising ocean worlds such as Enceladus, Europa, and Titan. Yeah, they need some freedom, those planets. To looking for biosignatures in the atmospheres of planets outside our solar system, NASA's science missions are working together with a goal to find unmistakable signs of life beyond Earth, except for the aliens that they capture flying the UFOs when the International Space Station video just happens to cut out at that time. Oh, yeah. Yeah, former NASA scientist Gilbert Levin, who worked on the Viking missions to the Red Planet during the 70s, published a stunning op-ed last month that said he is convinced that the space agency found evidence of life on Mars. Ohio University Emeritus Professor William Romeser, who spent the last several years looking at a number of photos publicly available from various Mars rovers, including the Curiosity rover, made the controversial claim that he had spotted a number of insect-like forms structured similarly to bees, as well as a reptile-like forms. There has been and still is life on Mars, Romiser, who specializes in arbovirology, whatever the hell that is, and general medical entomology. He's an ology kind of guy. There is an apparent diversity among the Martian insect-like fauna, which displayed many features similar to Terran insects that are interpreted as advanced groups. For example, the presence of wings flexion, agile gliding flight, and variously structured leg elements. Romiser also specifically mentioned the Curiosity rover, which has been exploring the Gale crater since landing on Mars in August 2012. Curiosity has made some incredible discoveries, including a surprising spike in the level of methane, because they got a lot of cows up there, oxygen behaving in a way that so far scientists cannot explain, a mysterious, unexplained white light, and many others. The claims from Romiser drew ire from the scientific community, including other entomologists. I'm a bit skeptical, Pepperdine University visiting professor and entomologist Susan Finkbeiner said. If the current living forms are there, we would need to see more evidence that life can be sustained. Where are the resources for these anthropods? What are they eating? What are they reproducing? Finkbeiner, who was not involved in examining the photos, of course not, but she's got a comment anyways, adding that if anything, the objects that Romiser claims are alive may be fossils. Oh, just run with it. They're bloody aliens, lady. Aliens. When in doubt, aliens. Science needs to learn that a little bit more. Have more fun with it. Yeah. Blame the Grinch or Mother Nature, but the annual Christmas in Ice Sculpture Park won't open this year in North Pole, Alaska. Why? Because of a lack of ice. It's the first cancellation since the event started 14 years ago in the city where Christmas is celebrated year-round and city light poles are decorated like candy canes. Executive Director Keith Fye says the ice park is next to the Santa Claus House gift shop in North Pole, located 14 miles southeast of Fairbanks. The park normally operates through December and features Yule-themed ice sculptures. Fye said there isn't enough ice on the ponds to harvest for the ice carvings just yet. The lack of ice on the lakes and ponds follows a warmer October in Alaska's interior. It was further exacerbated by snowfall, which hampers the formation of ice. North Pole has been almost 8 degrees warmer than normal, says Rick Thoman, a climate specialist at the International Arctic Research Center in Fairbanks. Even warmer temperatures were recorded last year and in 2013. The low temperature in October at North Pole this year was 14 degrees. The highest October minimum temperature in the past 50 years of recording, keeping the North Pole ice away. The warm oceans and the lack of sea ice are contributing to an immense amount of heat to the atmosphere regionally, so it's no surprise that we have a warm October. As soon as temperatures dropped and it was cold enough to form ice, then snow fell. That slowed down the formation of the ice. Damn snow. Bad snow. Is it caused by climate change? No, Thoman said. Is there another one of a series of warm winters in Alaska that are part of our changing climate? You bet. North Pole Community Chamber of Commerce Director Marlene Fogarty Phillips says the event attracted carvers from around the world. Well, let's hope they get some ice, because that's kind of cool. Rejoice! Get your horns up for the devil worm, as he's been genetically mapped. Scientists have only known about this extremophile nematode since 2008 because it lives such far underground and lifeless-seeming places. Its genome shows many adaptations designed to cope with the high heat where it lives. The devil worm is nicknamed from its scientific name. Oh my God, really? Hallis phallibus mephisto. Hallis phallibus mephisto. That sounds like a metal band, doesn't it? Just... Anyways, After the character of legend who emerges from hell to bargain for Foss' soul. Now, with the flames of ever-burning fire, I'll wing it myself. Mephistopheles says in Christopher Marlowe's dramatization, the real Mephisto nematode wings itself with fire, too, apparently. Scientists have found that it has duplicated a gene that repairs fire damage until it has 70 copies of the gene. It has multiple copies of a second protective gene, leading scientists to speculate that the microscopic animal has cloaked itself in armor to survive conditions in its environments. It has no choice but to adapt or die, one researcher said. The devil worm is the first genetically mapped subterranean creature, which gives researchers hope that studying other organisms will yield similarly unusual and inspiring results. Much of cutting-edge science studies living things and uses their mechanisms and adaptations to help design better, stronger, more environmentally friendly, and otherwise advantageous new materials and machines. The truth is stranger than fiction, and the devil worm is definitely stranger than its diabolical namesake. That one's going to hell. Definitely going to hell. All right, Captain Shirk, I knew you would throw this in. Anyways, so these shark researchers are working off the coast of Massachusetts. And anyways, trying to do a little work in the water. They're on a boat, of course. Some dude is at, like, the front end. They got one of them big, like, walking planks. Okay, and this great white shark keeps jumping out of the water to try and snatch this guy. Yeah. Yeah, the expert scientist, or whatever he is, researcher, was almost jumping off the plank to avoid the great white shark that was jumping under the water beneath him. This was a scene right out of Jaws. But the guy was nimble and quick. The video, which is posted on YouTube by the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, shows state shark researcher Greg Scomal using a pole to take underwater GoPro footage of a 9-foot female shark swimming near the vessel. The foot shows Scomal jumping when the shark breaches right under where he is standing on the pulpit. White sharks are wild and unpredictable animals, the Conservancy says. No kidding. They also like to feast on humans. This is a good reminder of the importance of following safety tips like don't go in the water, don't travel on the water, don't even look at the water, and always stay vigilant when in or on the water. How about just don't even go by it? Okay? Sharknado, people. This stuff is real. Very real. Okay? Go on a small boat like that, of course Jaws can take it down. Doesn't matter whether she's 9 feet or 29 feet. She could take it down. All right, we're going to hop back to NASA for a second because we're sticking with the water. They recently showed off its new underwater rover that it hopes one day could help in exploring alien ocean worlds in the search for life. The robot, known as Buoyant Rover for Under Ice Exploration, or BRUI, is designed to crawl under an ice cap. Right now, it's being tested in Antarctica in hopes one day it could go to ocean worlds such as Saturn's moons, Enceladus, or on Jupiter's moon, Europa, because, they need some freedom. The ice shells covering these distant oceans serve as a window into the oceans below, and the chemistry of the ice could help feed life within those oceans. Kevin Hand, NASA JPL lead scientist on the BRUI project, here on Earth, the ice is covering our polar oceans, serving as a similar role, and our team is particularly interested in what is happening when the water meets ice. Earlier this month, the space agency announced it had detected water vapor above the surface of Europa for the first time. The space agency says that the waters in Antarctica are the closest on Earth to those that would be seen on an icy moon. making them an ideal testing ground. The rover, which is 3 feet long and has 2 wheels that allow it to roll under the ice, is able to take pictures and collect data from where water and ice meet, known as the ice-water interface. We found that a lot of life often lives at the interfaces, both the sea bottom and the ice-water interface on top, said lead engineer Andy Klesch. Most submersibles have a challenging time investigating this area, as ocean currents might cause them to crash, or they would not waste too much power maintaining position. Cool. Good stuff. Let's move on. Back to Alaska here for a second. The publisher of a newspaper says he is willing to give the entire operation away to a person or couple willing to relocate to the town and oversee the operation. Larry Persily, owner of the Skagway News, says he has been editing the paper remotely ever since his editor resigned, and he is now seeking a new editor to live in Skagway and take ownership of the paper. The only way this paper has a long-term future, and anything that I've ever seen that works with small-town weeklies or bi-weeklies, is where the small-town editor owns, lives, and is participating in the community. And that's what it needs. Persily says he would be willing to turn the paper over without charge to a person or couple who either live in Skagway or would be willing to relocate. The publisher purchased the newspaper in April for an undisclosed amount, but he said it was less than 6 figures. Interested potential owners and editors are being asked to email Persily at paper@alaskan.com. And finally, a Florida man who allegedly robbed a bank while donning a Make America Great Again shirt apparently received far more money than he demanded and told the teller to give him a smaller amount of cash. 73-year-old Sandy Hawkins was arrested Tuesday following the alleged robbery that unfolded at a Wells Fargo in Boca Raton around 11:30 a.m. Hawkins, wearing a T-shirt that displayed his support for President Trump, told the teller he had a weapon and said, "This is a robbery." He demanded $1,100, and the teller counted out $2,100 bills. But Hawkins, according to a probable cause affidavit obtained by the media, told him it was too much, and he demanded $1,100. The teller then slid $1,100 through the window, and Hawkins took and left with it. Hawkins was discovered after the manager at the nearby sports bar he frequented identified him. Yeah, sheriff's deputies went to his home Tuesday. Reportedly, he confessed and said, "I will make this easy." He apparently handed them a bank deposit slip that said, "Give me $1,100. Now, no alarms. Hope to get caught." Hawkins' old landlord, Scott Vale, described the 73-year-old man as an affable, kind person who probably reached some kind of breaking point when his wife died in 2013. He was charged with robbery and booked at the Palm Beach County Jail. Such a polite robber. Marty, where's my clown? Where's my clown, Marty? Can't do the Thought of the Dave without the clown. On Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because, we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. What's your favorite conspiracy to learn about? Epstein didn't kill himself. There it is. Now we can continue. Marty at #SpacedOutRadio. Finally put the clown up. Oh, that's an ugly clown. Ugly clown, Marty. John, the whole 9/11 incident is interesting. The fact that there are some that say that the towers could not have collapsed, how did they, without additional help, etc., detonations, explosives, I want to know more. Tim, that Bill and Hillary were behind it, LMAO. Who's in the office now with ties to them? Why would Bill and Hillary wait so long? Give me a break. Catherine, my favorite conspiracy is the JFK conspiracy. There is just enough speculation on evidence to keep it going. If true, it was the moment power was taken. Jim, the whole web of conspiracy I love. Chris, no big secret. Epstein killed himself. He says that on a Alfred Hitchcock meme. Joe, World Trade Center Building 7 committed suicide just like Jeffrey Epstein. Wow. Vic, General Patton, killed by insiders. John Belushi, death, not an overdose. John Wayne, sent to a movie location that was radioactive. All WWE wrestlers that talked crap about Vince McMahon and ended up dead. Is it Satan worship? Daryl, the Kennedy assassination and how it was organized by the Bush family. Was it really? Or is that just speculation? Dan, Epstein, it almost seemed like there was no big elaborate plan. It was just go on in, wipe them out, tell everybody there was no guards, cameras were down, and that's that. Message sent. We can get you anywhere. Marty, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, did it really happen, or was it a false flag operation? You know, that's a good one, Marty. And by the way, we want to say thank you to you and your brothers and sisters who served in Vietnam. Very special to us here. Very, very special. Thank you, my friend. Kevin, what actually happened in the Alma Tunnel concerning Princess Diana's death? What was the cause of the accident? And if there were any person or group working behind the scene? Gee, I don't really know about that one. I really don't. I mean, the driver was drunk. Her driver was drunk. Very easy to do that. But I can see where the conspiracy is there. That is totally for sure. Big thank you to everybody who took part in today's Thought of the Dave on Twitter and on our Facebook pages. We're going to do it all again tomorrow. Make sure you put one in because there's a good chance it might get read on the air. If you want to hear that, I like to do it. You should too. Big thanks to Captain Shirk for a wonderful set of news on the SOR Newswire, which can be found at spacedoutradio.com. Captain Shirk working her little tail off to make sure you guys are all up to date on a daily basis. And a big thank you to Mr. Peter Robbins for coming on in and breaking down the conspiracy in the death of James Forrestal. Was it suicide? Was it murder? Or was it aliens? When in doubt, aliens. Remember that. You never go wrong. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, in our chat rooms on LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, and of course, all of you lovely members of the SOR Space Travelers Club. Yes, even you, Clam. Make sure you join our club. Hey, remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. I want to say a big thank you to all of you tuning us in wherever you may be. You made it a lot of fun because together, my friends,
Don't make a mistake. We're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. All right. Have a great night, everybody. We end the week with Bishop Plato. Let's get into some exorcisms before the weekend. That's going to be fun. Talk to you tomorrow night. Good night. Da-da-da-da.